folks, welcome back to News One. Now go back to our panel, Angela Robert Train, and Kim Brown. We're talking about this whole issue in terms of voter suppression. Robert, you mentioned a particular site. Here's the deal. I'm looking at right now the Texas voter ID law. And it says, here's a list of the acceptable forms of voter ID. Texas driver's license issued by the Texas Department of Public Safety. Texas election identification certificate issued by DPS. Texas personal identification card issued by DPS. Texas concealed handgun license issued by DPS. United States military identification card containing the person's photograph. United States citizenship certificate containing the person's photograph. United States passport. Now, what you laid out, the reason that's not true is because in many of these states, they have passed the laws that said not only in order to get the so-called free ID, you need to have a birth certificate, but not just a birth certificate from the Bureau of Vital Stats. It has to be the birth certificate with the raised seal. And so all of a sudden, so what happens is you got to pay for that. Then you have to pay to go into the office. One of the problems in Texas is that you don't have some DPS offices in 100 miles from where somebody lives.
So, Roland, here's my point, and just a simple question: How do we validate that we say who we say we are? How do we do that in this country? If you don't have an ID, how do I just come up and say, you know what, I'm Mickey Mouse, I'm a registered Democrat, and I want to vote in this election?
Well, first of all, when I vote, I either have my driver's license, okay, or I have my voter registration card.
Okay, and your voter registration card. And my voter registration card. Do you have to pay for that?
No.
Okay.
So hold on,
no.
Robert, but
that's issued by the state, is it not?
No,
but it's also besides the point. So when I just went to early vote in Maryland, they went through a series of checks. I didn't have to show my ID, but what they did ask me is verify your address for me, verify your date of birth. Those are things that you can do affirmatively that don't cost voters any money. What we should not do in a position where we have regular earnings and we're fine and it's easier to get to a DMV or an MVA like it's called in Maryland, we should not impose restrictions on voters who are trying to exercise their franchise where the laws and the rules are all over the place and at the last minute. That is my biggest problem with that. If we eventually want to move to a system of voter ID where there's a national ID and everybody can get it for free, fine. But right now, that's not where we are.
Here's the other issue. And this is why whenever this comes up, and I talk to Republicans and conservatives, I explain to them, voter suppression goes beyond the ID.
Right.
See, what Greg did, with their investigation, that's voter suppression. In North Carolina, there's an early voting location on the campus of Appalachian State. 18,000 students there. The Republicans in North Carolina deliberately removed the early voting location from that campus to a location that's far away, that's not as accessible. Why? Because those 18,000 students, many of them voted Democrat. That's voter suppression.
And we've seen similar tactics employed in Wisconsin, in Ohio as well. And when we talk about what this ID system is about now, it's about keeping people away from the polls. It's about discouraging the vote.
It is not voter fraud.
And suppressing the vote, exactly. Because when we talk about in Florida, 186 people flagged, 85 people identified. In the state of Texas, since the year 2003, 20 million votes cast. I believe the state of Texas have only prosecuted 20 people, or less than 100, for voter fraud. This is not a problem. And if we're trying to so-called protect the integrity of the elections, actually what you're doing is making the integrity of the elections become more into question by excluding literally hundreds of thousands of people in order to identify a handful that are actually doing something wrong.
Here's the other thing. Roland read the list of acceptable forms of ID. Please note that a gun license, what is it? The gun?
Texas concealed handgun license.
Concealed handgun license is permissible. You know what's not on this list?
College ID.
That's exactly right.
In fact, in Georgia, they allow for, if you go to a state school in Georgia, you can use your student ID because it's a state institution. Well, Texas said, well, forget that. We're not even going to take it from a state university. The thing with that, what's here, and I don't care, and I've asked numerous Republicans to show me or to disprove this to me. They keep talking about voter fraud. But when so let's just say voter ID is all about voter fraud. Okay, well, explain to me the other voter suppression. Explain to me the moving of early voting locations. Explain to me in Georgia where they tried to cut early voting from 28 to 6 days. Explain to me not allowing voting on Sunday. Like is that big of a difference from Saturday when all of a sudden, no, you can't vote on Sunday. And explain to me why we've had record turnout in the past 2 elections, but all of a sudden, oh no, we got to change some stuff. Robert, go ahead. Robert, go ahead.
Sure, Lynn.
So, Roland, what you just described is despicable. So moving voting
booths... If it's despicable, then why are Republican legislatures repeatedly passing such laws?
I can't speak to that because I'm not a Republican state legislator. I can only speak for myself. And to answer your question, number one, it's despicable. What I believe what Republicans are looking at, they probably look back in 2008, and they see that Acorn did certain things in the presidential election. The Obama campaign...
1 second. Was Acorn... Hold on. I got a question, though. What you mentioned Acorn. Were they caught?
Yes, they were.
Hold on. Were they caught under existing law?
Yes, they were.
So if the existing law caught Acorn, doesn't it mean the existing law was effective?
Yes.
Okay, so why all the new laws?
That's a good question.
Because the writing is on the wall, okay? We saw the demographics in 2012. We saw over 90+ African Americans vote Democrat, over 80% plus Hispanics vote for Democrat, over 70+ Asian Americans voted Democrat. This is what's happening. And you know what? The Republicans are screwing themselves not only with minority voters, but with young college students as well.
Because they're screwing them.
Because they're not going to forget this as they get older.
So Kim and Angela make a very good point. Look, America is browning. More and more brown people are voting Democrat. The numbers don't lie. I'm not going to sit here and try to argue that doesn't make sense. The question becomes, and it just goes back to a simple point that no one simply can answer, is we have certain laws in the books that says, look, if in fact you say who you say, prove it. Just prove it.
I told you how I proved it when I went to my election.
I didn't interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
Can we just be respectful?
This.
Oh, well, go ahead.
No.
The floor is you. Go ahead.
Well, then I'm going to change the subject to Georgia. So in Georgia, I want to know why a Republican Secretary of State purge, or it refuses to process in a timely manner 40,000+ new voter registrations. And again, Kim, I think it goes back to the last point. So I'll leave it there.
Robert, final point.
Every single person in this country should be allowed to vote. No person should be discriminated against. No person should be suppressed because of they say who they say they are. The simple question is if in fact you can buy a pack of cigarettes or perhaps maybe even some alcohol or get on a train or a plane and have a valid state voter ID, state ID, I'm not exactly sure why you can't have a valid ID.
But again, Robert, it's a fact. You actually don't need a state-issue ID to even get on a plane.
But guess what? Getting on a plane is not my constitutional right. Being able to cast a vote is my constitutional right, not getting on an airplane.
You can actually, if you do not have your driver's license, I've done it. If you have another form of ID, a Costco card, a Sam's card, another card that has your photo on it, you can get on the plane.
And guess what? And I got to answer that question. That happened to me actually last week when I was going through Dulles Airport. I forgot my driver's license. I had a Costco card. The man said, I can take your Costco card. I said, tell me why. He said, because the stringent ID laws on the books Costco actually adheres to. Costco verifies that you, in fact, is an American citizen.
Actually, you know
so
what?
Therefore,
that's exactly my Costco card. I didn't have to show ID. I just simply signed the form and took a picture.
But guess what?
I just took a picture.
But guess what Costco does?
I'm just saying.
So you throw out these zingers. Well, go ahead.
No. The whole point. But you keep using train. I've never shown ID to get on the train. Never. I've never shown one to get on the train.
Can we do another segment? Let's go to Amtrak.com.
You can go to Amtrak.com all you want to. But when I'm coming up, I'm talking to Black Girls Code. So y'all type 1 second. That's all coming up next right here, folks, on News 1 now on TV1.